Cub. Welcome to Pod Save America. I'm Jon Favreau.
I'm Jon Lovett.
I'm Tommy Vietor.
Today on the pod, we're going to be talking about Israel. We're going to be talking about North Korea. We're going to be talking about the White House and their leaking, mocking people who are dying problem.
So, I got to tell you, there's a problem, and there's a not a problem.
That's right. And we're going to get into just which is which.
Can't wait to find out.
And later in the pod, my interview with the notoriously camera-shy Michael Avenatti.
How did we get him to do press?
A lawyer who's representing actress Stormy Daniels as if he needs an introduction. Other pods, it says. Other pods. Love it or leave it. I heard there was a supercut episode. That's what it says here.
An
supercut.
Awesome supercut episode of our live shows in Baltimore and Columbus, where we talked about social media and Twitter with a bunch of great panelists, including social media experts and researchers, to talk about the way social media is changing our politics. That show is really, really good, and you can check it out now. People are loving it. And then also, we're doing a
people are loving it.
They're
Donald Trump.
That's what I was doing. I'm just being that's what we do now. We hype ourselves. Lie, cheat, and hype yourself. And we have a live show in Philly on Sunday, and there are still a few seats left. Not many,
Sunday.
Tommy. It's a Sunday. We're doing one Friday. That'll be out Saturday. And then we're doing another show Sunday. Love it or leave it, never sleeps.
Never sleeps.
Okay, let's talk about the news. The United States officially moved its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem today. I'm going to try that again. Monday. The United States officially moved its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem on Monday, reversing decades of American foreign policy in a move that many Middle East observers have called inflammatory, as it would take a crucial piece of leverage off the table for peace negotiations. Tommy, how big of a deal is this move, and why do many people view it as divisive?
Tommy, give us the Netanyahu what, where, when, and why of this.
He has been planning that line.
For
the last
seconds.
5 minutes.
That was amazing ad lib. So there are two significant events colliding this week. Sorry.
Tommy, are you with us?
Should have done some actual gargling. So there's two significant events colliding this week. As you said, John, on Monday, the Trump administration officially opened the new U.S. embassy, which had been relocated, sort of, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. I think they slapped a plaque up on another old building, and they called it the new embassy. It is fraught, to say the least. Jerusalem has enormous religious, historic significance. Both sides claim it as their capital, the Israelis and the Palestinians. So Jared and Ivanka flew out. Mnuchin came. They had a ceremony that kind of felt like a Trump rally. It was also the 70th anniversary of President Truman recognizing Israel's independence. So big day there. But meanwhile, there's this horrific violence in Gaza as part of ongoing protests. There are reports of more than 50 dead and 2,000 wounded. It's hard to verify these reports because they're coming out of the Hamas government in Gaza, but that is obviously staggering numbers. They were organized and hijacked by Hamas, these protests, which control Gaza. They are ostensibly about the Palestinians demanding the right to return to parts of Israel that they were driven out from, or protesting the blockade of Gaza. But people were worried that this is going to get worse. So there's a lot happening here. But part of the reason the embassy being moved is so fraught is because the status of Jerusalem, who controls it, who has their capital where, is supposed to be decided in negotiations between the two parties in the Middle East peace process. And many Palestinians feel like we're essentially handing over a part of Jerusalem that will likely end up being the Israel's capital no matter what happens, but they're feeling like, okay, this is a big, important piece of this negotiation that we are recognizing by moving the embassy there today.
What was the Obama administration position on moving the embassy?
Every administration says they're going to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem as part of a campaign promise, and then everybody holds on actually doing it because the intelligence community, the Arab neighbors, a whole bunch of parties were concerned that it would lead to uprising, protests, violence, bloodshed. So we did exactly that. Obama said he would move the embassy, but ultimately never did because there was concerns about security. And essentially, more importantly, that it was a final status issue that needed to be negotiated.
Can we talk about the violence in Gaza? It does seem like, you said that Hamas obviously hijacked some of these protests, but it also seems like from reports that Israelis were firing on some unarmed protesters who were trying to climb this fence.
Yeah.
What justification do Israelis give for shooting and killing protesters in Gaza who are unarmed?
Yeah, it's bad. The Tuesday of this week is a date for Palestinians they call the Nakba, which is referred to the catastrophe, which marks the day in 1948 when all these Palestinians were driven out of their homes. And so these protests have been going on for several weeks leading up to tomorrow to recognize this day. Hamas did hijack it and they took it over. And, what the Israelis say is when you have individuals storming the fence, trying to break into Israel, that they will use force in sort of escalating fashion. So there is tear gas, there's rubber bullets, which don't really work from long distances. And then they have been using live ammunition. And apparently their rules of engagement are that you can only use lethal force, like shoot for the head when you see, quote, terrorist activity, whatever exactly that means. And that if it's shy of that, they're shooting for below the knees. But,
Seems like some people were shot in the stomach.
Getting shot in the stomach, getting shot in the abdomen, getting shot in the thigh or knee, and then going to a hospital in Gaza, your odds aren't very good. So this is, pretty horrific.
Well, it's
going on.
It's also the context too. They're protesting. Some of the protests were about the embassy move. Some of the protests were also have been going on for quite some time about Israel's economic blockade of Gaza. So
Right.
people in Gaza are essentially trapped in this area, right? And there's an economic blockade, and so they're trying to protest, and now they're being shot at.
Yeah, I mean, the situation in Gaza is awful. It's one of the most densely populated places on earth. There's no work, there's no jobs, there's sporadic electricity, the water's dirty. There's just no opportunity for these people. Now, Israel withdrew their forces in 2005, but the UN still classifies it as occupied because the Israelis control the sea border, the land border. The Egyptians control their border, and it's rarely opened. So they restrict the movement of goods and individuals. So it's a dire situation in Gaza, and it's sort of been forgotten by the international community.
So Jared Kushner acknowledged the violence in his remarks, except he said that the protesters being shot at are, quote, part of the problem, not the solution. These comments were not included in the excerpts of his remarks that were delivered to the press ahead of time, and then they were omitted in the White House transcript afterwards. That doesn't seem normal, does it?
No.
Yeah, you can't just edit the transcript with the parts that your dumb son-in-law said because he was in a fit of pique.
I mean, do you remember when Obama would ad-lib back in the day? Or even if we put out like a briefing transcript from Josh Earnest or somebody else and we had to edit something that was a typo or was incorrect or transcribed wrongly, we would update it with like a star indicating that we had changed the official transcript. Now they're just putting out transcripts that are omitting key
that are doctored. Yeah,
graphs.
It's another one of those small ways they're undermining the kind of bedrock systems that live between administrations. I think one of the hardest tasks for the administration that follows Trump will be rebuilding the apparatus for sophisticated, honest rendering of events because it's all been so broken. I mean, everything from every press release having a bunch of typos and mistakes all the way to sending out incorrect transcripts is something that is both incompetent and just sort of a symptom of the way this White House operates.
Well, I got something worse.
Oh, no.
Because this entire episode isn't fucked up enough, the Trumps also invited evangelical pastor Robert Jeffress to lead a prayer at the embassy opening. Here's some comments from the highlight reel from Robert Jeffress. He called Islam and Mormonism heresies from the pit of hell. He suggested that the Catholic Church was led astray by Satan, said that gays live a dirty and miserable lifestyle, said that Jews are going to hell. They also invited Robert Hagee.
Jews going to hell.
Yeah, at the happy opening of the embassy in Jerusalem, Jews are going to hell.
Yeah.
Also, Robert Hagee
It's
was
weird.
the pastor who famously said that in 2005, when Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, it was because God was punishing New Orleans for hosting a gay pride parade. Those are the people that were representing the United States of America abroad today, giving benedictions and opening prayers at the opening of the Jerusalem embassy. Cannot think of anything more disgusting.
Did Joel Osteen say no? Or what happened?
I I'm just trying to imagine, like, obviously with Obama, we went through the whole Reverend Wright thing. The first time they heard about Reverend Wright's crazy comments was Obama's announcement speech in Springfield. Right. He was supposed to give the benediction, and immediately they said, "Oh no, absolutely not." Now we're bringing these people, these two people who are saying that Islam, Judaism, Mormonism, cults, people going to hell, we're bringing them overseas to represent the United States of America. What the fuck is that?
It's again, there were so many ways in which our system was protected by human shame. And by a desire to not make people too angry or sad for no reason. And if you remove that, if you remove any compunction about elevating horrible people, about caring about what people said in the past, about having respect for gay people or Muslim people or Catholics, I mean, like, that's very old-fashioned to be bigoted against Catholics.
It really is.
That's the thing. It's some of these
it's real throwback. But the levers for saying this is wrong and having an effect by saying this is wrong is someone inside the White House has to give a shit. Yeah. But these people don't give a shit.
And it's not like it's just a bunch of godless Democrats complaining about this. You have Mitt Romney saying a religious bigot should not be giving the prayer that opens the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. But there is this professional class of evangelical leader that has decided that nothing Trump does or says matters anymore if he advances their agenda on other fronts. Like, there's a big profile in the New York Times, I think it was this weekend, about a guy named David Brody, who's like the lead anchor for Christian Broadcast Network.
Yeah.
It's a guy who used to hammer Democrats, still does all the time. And now it talks about his cozy relationship with Trump. They get lunch together. He goes to briefings. He gets exclusive access to Pence and never asks any of the tough questions about, affairs with the porn star or any of the things that you would think that the Christian broadcast news would care about, given their past coverage of, say, Bill Clinton.
We should also remember that we don't have anyone prominent on our side who we're bringing to events like that are saying shit like that. But sometimes when someone even makes a minor comment that others deem offensive on the left, often we go into apology mode, say no. Like, after this presidency, no.
It's also just like
we need to really seriously think of when we, on our side, when someone says something that might be construed as offensive, what we actually decide to do.
I mean, you look at Mitt Romney saying, I'm glad Mitt Romney
good for him.
said this.
I'm too.
But the number of Islamophobic, anti-Muslim bigots, anti-gay bigots that populate this administration is staggering. And that hearing, it's interesting, in that run of bigotry from that guy, the Muslim piece is what we hear all the fucking time. We've just decided that there's a certain class of Republican has decided they don't need to point that out every time when it's on their side. We've made this point before. Imagine if somebody said this about Jews, or imagine if somebody said this about
this guy did.
Mormons. This guy did.
You get you get a ticket to Israel.
Yeah, enjoy El.
I'm glad to be here. I do believe that Jews are going to hell, but congratulations on the. What?
You'll eventually be in hell, but right now you get to enjoy this wonderful embassy.
Oh, it's a weird. That view that we need Israel to be controlled fully by the Jewish people before that Christ can return is a big strain of like really fundamentalist Christian theology, and a big reason that there is enormous support for Israel. It's this very weird deal where things turn out pretty badly.
Now we're going to convert you in the end, but for now, let's
talk.
Right.
Let's do business.
Let's turn to North Korea. The White House announced last week that President Trump will meet in Singapore with North Korean head of state Kim Jong Un on June 12th to discuss a potential deal on North Korea's nuclear program. Over the weekend, National Security Advisor John Bolton and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that the two sides were already in agreement over what the ultimate objectives of the meeting would be. They both said that Trump will push for, quote, complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. But then Pompeo said that Trump would be pushing to make sure that America is no longer held at risk by North Korea's nuclear arsenal, and that he hopes that they get rid of their chemical and biological weapons. So it does seem like Pompeo, either he misspoke or he has a different position than Bolton in the administration. What do you make of this, Tommy?
Well, there's been a lot of Korea news. Like any engaged couple, they finally did it. They picked a date. So June 12th in Singapore, Trump, Kim Jong Un,
save the date. Save the date.
Two maniacs, one bucket of chicken. episode title?
I love it. Like you were saying, it does seem like the U.S. position is sort of like coming into focus, but they're a little all over the place. Like Trump has said, North Korea needs to get rid of its nuclear weapons, period, in any deal. Pompeo seemed to suggest that they might be able to keep their current arsenal, and that the real objective is keeping them from striking the U.S. only. That will really make our allies in Japan and South Korea very happy. We also know that Kim said he will dismantle his most prominent nuclear test site. Trump tweeted how smart and gracious that was, but many experts think the thing basically caved in from nuclear testing, so that it's no longer usable. So
yeah, it's sort of like a disposable camera situation.
And that's quite the concession. Pompeo is also out there acting like any economic support that North Korea is going to get is going to be private sector businesses just like rolling in. I find that a little hard to believe. There won't be any direct U.S. economic aid because Bolton's kind of saying no. But again, I'm happy this is happening.
Yeah,
get it done, guys. But
still a ways off from grande skim lattes in Pyongyang.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry. So I wanted to ask, there's been some punditry that is like, why won't liberals give Trump credit for all that he's done around North Korea? So far, what has Kim offered Trump that past North Korean regimes haven't offered past presidents? What is new so far about what Kim has? Because we know he's offered the rest of the meetings; they just didn't take it. We know that they've destroyed testing sites before.
Right. Nothing.
The crossing the border.
Yeah, I mean, look, crossing the border to South Korea, having that conversation, a wildly improved tone. There's a lot of atmospherics that are shockingly better than the status quo 5, 6, 7 years ago,
or 20 years ago,
or 20 years ago. But right, I mean,
it seems like there's been these periods in the past where it seemed hopeful,
repeatedly,
and there's been a change of tone, and they've met, and the North Korean and South Korean leader has met.
Yeah, that's why the whole conversation about the Nobel Prize is so silly and everything else, because we're just so far ahead of actual what success should look like, which is them getting rid of their nuclear weapons. I mean, that's the whole point of this.
Is that So I was going to say, what is a successful summit short of them giving up all of their nuclear weapons? Which seems. Do you think they will give up all of their nuclear weapons?
Feels unlikely to me.
So is there any success short of that, them giving up nuclear weapons?
Probably. I think it's the only realistic success is they have some sort of program or some sort of weapons capacity or capability that they hold on to.
Is there a scenario where they give up the capacity to strike the United States but not South Korea, and then they still maintain something? I'm trying to figure out what Pompeo was saying.
I guess you could get rid of their entire ICBM program and call that a success. I just don't know how you could shift the goalpost that much and call it a success or make your allies happy.
Yeah, I feel like there's two things side by side. One is the fundamental situation, which we talked about before, which is we've created incentives, and North Korea knows those incentives, which is if you want to be a closed-off regime that tortures your people and threatens your neighbors, having nuclear weapons is one way to protect yourself. And protect yourself from foreign invasion, protect yourself from bombing, protect yourself from regime change, protect yourself from American foreign policy shifts. You look at Libya, you look at Iraq, you look now at the Iran deal being torn up, you look at that, and it's hard to imagine the incentives not being there for Kim Jong Un to maintain nuclear weapons. They are an insurance policy against aggression. They are also a card you can play, which he's playing now. I don't know that Barack Obama didn't change that, George W. Bush didn't change that, Bill Clinton didn't change that, Donald Trump didn't change that. And I don't know that there is a way to change that. And this feels like the kind of locked policy problem that no one seems to have a way to unlock. Put that aside. I think the question that is harder to answer is Donald Trump's odd behavior and his refusal to kind of play by the logic of smart experts in the region who inevitably hedge towards a kind of moderate, sensible, slow boil, slow rolling approach, tit for tat, small steps, give a little, take a little. Put that aside because he doesn't care and it's boring. And he wants a win and he wants the praise and all the rest. Did that shake things up to allow for the possibility of something short of giving up a nuclear program, but something better than another president could have gotten? And I think we have to be open to the possibility that the answer there is yes.
But we don't know yet.
But we don't know. And B, at the heart of all of this is the worst person we've ever made president, who can break it apart, ruin it, listen to John Bolton, use an excuse for military action, not accept the terms, walk away, screw it up, lie, what have you. And so I just think we don't know, and there's a lot of pieces that Donald Trump can mess up along the way, but I think we have to also be humble about it.
Yeah, I think that the whole question, does Trump get credit or not, which seems to be coming up more and more in all the punditry, is such a premature, stupid question to ask right now because we just don't know. And in fact, I think we should also be prepared for the fact that after the summit, Donald Trump will definitely probably try to claim victory, and we still won't know until maybe months from then if it's a real good outcome or not.
I don't care.
Years.
I don't give a shit about the conversation about Donald Trump deserving credit. Donald Trump deserves the credit for whatever Donald Trump does and doesn't do. He's the president, whatever. But what I do think it's also premature. I think that there are too many. I think there's a lot of experts and there's a lot of people who have looked at this for a long time who don't seem to want to acknowledge just how little their expertise has gotten us for a long time. That's all. Not to say that
Who?
I just think in general, there's been a lot of people who thought what Donald Trump was doing for a long time was incredibly dangerous and incredibly risky. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But we're at a point where, in part because Trump is undisciplined, in part because Trump didn't care what people said, we are at a point where there is this moment of a possibility for something different, that something there is a true inflection point now, and you have to look at that and say, well, a lot of experts said this wouldn't happen.
I just want us to learn the right lessons from these things. I'm totally cool giving him credit for sanctions. I'm cool giving him credit for being open to talks and accepting them quickly and pushing this thing down the road. I think where we are being problematic is to act like the madman theory of tweeting fire and fury, all that shit was somehow helpful. I find it highly unlikely that was a useful thing for him to do, especially when his own staff was undercutting him on the side, saying no, there's no real military option. Steve Bannon on the record,
and unprovable. It's speculative.
Of course,
but
so is criticizing it.
But it's a show. That's what we're talking about.
I know.
But it's what's important, I think, is remembering that the person driving this train still is Kim Jong Un and South Korea, and the sort of really big steps that they've taken, that rapprochement, and that were helpful, hopefully, and can help guarantee a good outcome here. But I don't want to pretend that threatening every country out there is the way to do this.
Yeah, what I was going to say is it's just as likely that if we end up having to give credit to Donald Trump for this, it's because his administration pursued a path that was not unlike what Barack Obama did with the Iran deal.
Oh, absolutely.
Which seems like which also, I mean, I realize that we could point out hypocrisy all day long on this podcast and it gets very old, but it's amazing seeing Pompeo be like, yeah, we'll give them, freedom from economic sanctions if they get rid of their nuclear program. You're like, gee, where did I just hear about this? Yeah. Oh, the Iran deal that conservatives think was the worst fucking thing in the world. What is different about what would happen in North Korea and what happened with the Iran deal, except for the fact that North Korea possibly already has nuclear weapons and Iran didn't?
I mean, we don't know the outcome yet.
Right.
But it's certainly the case that there's all these additional activities that we don't like that Iran does that Trump rightly criticizes. The ICBM development, the missile development, the messing around in Syria, messing around in Yemen. I think you could sort of draw up a similarly bad list of things that North Korea does, like throwing hundreds of thousands of dissidents in a concentration camp, or ICBM development, obviously, and make that, make a similar argument. It does feel like you need some consistency for anyone who does deals with us to understand it.
The other part of it, I agree with all that. The kind of paradox at the heart of the North Korea problem for so long has been we can't accept any deal that involves them having nuclear weapons, and they cannot accept any deal in which they don't have nuclear weapons. And I don't know the resolution of that. I don't know how you get around that. But what it seems that we were doing for a very long time, and are maybe still doing, I'm not saying that Trump hasn't discovered some secret solution here, is creating sanctions, putting pressure on the regime, and then that regime still slowly, inexorably move towards a more and more sophisticated nuclear weapons program because we don't have the tools to stop them, and they know that it's the only key to their survival.
I think the broader concern is that there's a treaty called the NPT, the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, that Israel, India, North Korea, Pakistan, and South, they're not a part of, but the international community looks to this treaty as a way to establish a norm that says no one else is allowed to get nuclear weapons except for the people who already had them in, like, I think 1970, and that those who have them commit long term to wind down their arsenals with the goal of no nuclear weapons. And any expansion of the number of countries that it seems to have nuclear weapons that seems sanctioned by the international community, whether through unilateral deals or what have you, is troubling and problematic and in a broader trend that, you know, goes against all sort of hopes for non-proliferation.
Yeah.
Wonky, nerdy.
Okay.
No, I think
That's
it's just
Tough
just
problem.
such a terrible,
Yeah, it
it's just
sucks.
such a terrible, intractable problem that everyone has been arguing about for 30 years, and it's never gotten better, not one time.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope for a good outcome. Let's talk about the White House. We haven't talked about this yet, but last week The Hill reported that when White House staff were meeting to talk about Gina Haspel's confirmation process for CIA director, one communications aide, Kelly Sadler, joked that it didn't matter that John McCain was opposed to her nomination because McCain, who has brain cancer, is, quote, dying anyway. So this is gross, but instead of reprimanding Sadler or apologizing for the comment, the White House has been attacking whoever leaked the comment, with Donald Trump calling that person a traitor. Sadler reportedly called McCain's daughter Meghan to apologize and promised to issue a public apology, but that has not happened yet. Nobody hold your breath. Anyone surprised about this?
I think you should start by just saying that is, people make off-color jokes, and people say things that they think are going to be funny that aren't funny. People screw up in meetings. People cross a line. It is still extraordinary for someone to say that kind of a joke in the White House. We all worked in the White House. People make jokes. But the idea that someone would make a joke like that is so crazy because everybody knows where you're sitting. You're sitting in this building, and you're sitting in this place where you just don't make those kinds of jokes. And I think the fact that someone said it and then the fact that it leaks speaks to the fact that White Houses reflect the person in charge, and the person in charge is a scumbag who leaks all the time.
And cruel.
And
it's just a cruel. They are cruel. Donald Trump is cruel. I mean, like, I wasn't totally surprised by the comment because they're working for a president who said of John McCain, I like war heroes who weren't shot down. You know, I mean, the way he's talked about Mexicans, the way he's talked about women, the way he's talked about African shithole countries. The man is cruel. His staff is cruel. John Kelly interviewed with NPR last week when he talked about, you know, if children come over the border with their parents and they're ripped apart, you know, foster care or whatever will take care of them. Whatever.
I was surprised and not surprised at the same time. Okay, like that's a horrendously bad joke to make, and I'm someone who's made many, many, many horrendously bad jokes. But what I think this administration normally does is try to stamp out PR problems that weren't created by Donald Trump himself. Everybody else, he's allowed to screw up, do whatever he wants, and he goes to the mattresses for everything. Normally, if some flunky, you know, like lower level aide screws up and does something shitty, that person gets slapped on the wrist or at least gotten in trouble, and they try to fix it that way.
Rudy says the wrong thing on Sean Hannity, and Trump goes,
exactly.
He's just getting started. He's a moron.
He's just getting right. So
he's my dumb uncle.
You get slapped down a little bit. The fact that they still won't fix this is crazy to me because A, it's obvious you should. It's the right thing to do. B, you promised the man's daughter that you would publicly apologize. So they're chalking this up to the fact that, well, Trump thinks the way you show weakness is to apologize because you're never going to get credit from the left and yada yada. It's like in no part of their thinking does doing the right thing ever factor in.
It's all political.
And like they're getting hammered by Republican senators. Everyone is hammered.
That's what
It's like there's no constituency for mocking John McCain as he dies.
No.
But that's, I mean, I think you tweeted this, Tommy. It's like it's one thing to make a horrible joke, to say something that bad, which is bad. And you're right. You're in the White House. Never say something like that. But if you say it, the next move is, I am so sorry. I made a huge mistake.
Yeah.
My bad. I'm sorry. Call the family. Say it publicly.
It
the
was
White
gallows
House,
humor. I regretted it.
The
I
White House
shouldn't have
says
said
too.
it.
Why? Why can't they do that? Why does the White House have to suddenly, and then, you know, Mercedes Schlapp, who fucking left the correspondence dinner
in a snit. Smoky eyes.
Because of
now the civilization is ruined.
And she said, put this on the record, I stand by Kelly Sadler.
Why?
I stand by.
What
I
is it you're
stand by the
standing by?
woman who mocked someone who was dying. But you know what? I will leave this correspondence dinner to get to the fucking after party 10 minutes early because I am offended by a joke.
And they're
These
acting
people
like
fucking suck.
So, and they're acting like leaks are the problem, and the press is sort of leaning into this. I mean, what's funny is Sarah Huckabee Sanders lit everybody on the comms team up for leaking, and then 5 people in that room leaked to Axios about the meeting, about the leaks. And then Jonathan Swan over the weekend did a whole other story where all his favorite sources explained to him why they leaked. So these people have no respect for their team, no respect for the president, no respect for the office. Like it speaks to a bunch of mercenaries who were, dumb enough, valueless enough to take this job in the first place.
When you work in the Donald Trump White House, you are surrounded by the kind of people who would work in the Donald Trump White House. And these are the dregs of Republican public life. These are people with no scruples, or worse, Trump scruples. These are and people that would not have been qualified, would not have been elevated in a Jeb Bush administration, a Mitt Romney administration, a Marco Rubio administration, because we don't have to agree with them, we don't have to like them, we don't have to like their worldview, but there are smart, talented Republican operatives who would kill to work in a White House that other than this one.
And this is going to happen in the future. If we do not say as a society that these people, when they leave this White House, should not be rewarded in public life. Like this, the problem with a lot of these comments is they go right down the memory hole. We all have collective amnesia because there's like a million scandals a day. And then 7 months from now, when Kelly Sadler is announced as a Harvard IOP fellow in a press release, we're all going to be like, that sucks that happened. And then someone's going to be like, well, don't you think that Harvard should have Republicans as well as Democrats? You don't think anyone from the Trump administration should come to Harvard? No, these people they shouldn't go to Harvard. They shouldn't get speeches. They shouldn't get book deals. They shouldn't get invited to the DC fucking fancy parties. They're bad people. They lie. They don't apologize. They're cruel.
The fact that I think there's a chance we get to the end of this administration and Republicans will develop a narrative about what happened that kind of cordons off Trump from the Republican Party, that kind of cuts it off like a gangrenous limb. So they will deny the culpability for it. They will deny the responsibility for it. They will deny their collaboration with it. So they'll try to make sure that Trump people get none of the perks, get none of the credit for what they were as Republicans, except for the money. So these people will. So Paul Ryan will say what Donald Trump? I never met the man, but then they'll still get their book deals and they'll still get. So they'll be in the ways that are beneficial to them. They will be treated like ordinary Republicans. In the ways that it will hurt the Republican Party, they will be ostracized.
Yeah, I mean, look, for a lot of people in Washington, in the right wing, in the Breitbart world, Trump has been good business. And look no further than Olivia Nuzzi's profile of Sean Hannity and Donald Trump and their symbiotic relationship. Someone in the story literally describes Hannity as like Trump's wife because he doesn't actually live with Melania, and so he needs someone to decompress and chit-chat with at night, and that is the role that Sean Hannity has played, according to a source in the story. And, Hannity has employed Michael Cohen as his attorney, never disclosed it, never paid a price for failing to do that. Like, journalistic ethics don't apply to these people anymore if they're in bed with the Trump administration and they're making a parent company money. I mean, it is disgusting.
And again, the lesson for us is you don't take the criticism and the whining from the Trump administration or the conservative media seriously. Don't answer it. Don't take it seriously. Don't worry about it. Because these people are all bad faith actors, and it's not worth our responding to them. Yeah.
The thing that's sad is the world is treating Sean Spicer like he's normal. He's got the book deal. Yeah. The book is coming out.
Not the world, though. It's the swamp that Donald Trump was talking about. It's the elite. The
elite world that after people leave these kinds of jobs, get speaking gigs or high-profile consultantships or consultancies or what have you. Sean Spicer is leaving the White House in a way that looks very similar to the way Ari Fleischer or Scott.
No, I totally disagree. Sean Spicer has gotten kicked in the teeth publicly. He didn't get a network deal.
That's true.
Speaking fees are nowhere near. Like he
did get that Madame Tussauds wax museum.
He's got the book deal. He got the book deal.
He did a Madame Tussauds opening of
he did get to unveil the statue.
I think look, he's making his money, but he has gotten.
He got a little spot on the Emmys too, though.
I guess the answer is more nuanced. I guess in the end, he is being treated more respectfully than he deserves, but with less solicitousness than traditional White House press secretaries have gotten. Maybe that's true. maybe that's the best we can hope for in this broken fucking culture.
Bad people. Okay, when we come back, my interview with Michael Avenatti.
I can't believe you got him.